All right, so this isn't just another explainer. I want you to think of this as a prologue, the opening act to a massive 35-part journey. We're about to dive into a book that didn't just tell a story, it shaped empires and inspired billions of people. And we're not just going to skim the surface. No, we're going to dissect the very anatomy of this thing, figure out how this story was so perfectly preserved, and why it's considered such a masterpiece.
You know, some book titles are, well, they're just street signs, right? They tell you exactly what you're getting, but then you have titles that are more like poetry. Ar-Raheeq Al-Makhtoom, which translates to the Sealed Nectar, is definitely in that second camp. It's pure poetry. Just saying the name, you can almost feel the mystique, can't you?
So what's really in a name like that? What's it all about? Well, it's way more than just a pretty phrase. The title itself is kind of a coded message. It's making a promise to you, the reader, about what you're about to discover.
It suggests something incredibly precious, something that's been perfectly preserved in its absolute purest form, almost like a rare vintage. It's this idea that the truth has been protected from being watered down or distorted over all these centuries, just waiting for someone to finally break the seal and experience it.
But that leads to a huge question, right? How do you actually find that pure, undiluted truth? I mean, we're talking about digging through 14 centuries of history here. That's a landscape cluttered with all kinds of stories, myths, and different versions of events. So the real challenge isn't just finding a story, it's finding the definitive story. How on earth do you separate the signal from all that noise?
Well, in the scholarly world, there's a specific term for this kind of work. It's called a sira. And you can think of a sira as the ultimate definitive biography of the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. For hundreds of years, scholar after scholar tried to write one. But as we got into the modern era, there was this growing feeling, a need for a single, undisputed, gold standard version.
And that brings us to 1976. The Muslim World League basically said, okay, let's settle this once and for all. They launched this massive global competition. They put out a call to the greatest historians and minds on the planet with one simple challenge. Bring us the best, most authoritative sira you can possibly write.
And the response? It was absolutely staggering. 171 manuscripts came flooding in. And listen, these weren't just weekend projects. These were the life's work of the world's top historians, coming from every corner of the globe, all vying for this single prize. The intellectual battle here was just fierce.
So, out of this field of 171 intense competitors, there was one. One manuscript was awarded the top prize. It simply stood head and shoulders above all the rest, recognized for its incredible brilliance and sheer scholarly power. And that book, of course, was the Sealed Nectar. Okay, so what was it? What made this one book beat out 170 others? It wasn't just that the writing was beautiful, though it is. The real secret, the key to its victory, was the methodology. The author, Sheikh Safiur-Rahman Mubarakpuri, developed this incredibly rigorous scholarly filter, and that filter is the foundation of the whole masterpiece. And this, right here, is the core genius of the book. Its brilliance isn't just in the story it tells, but in its absolute, unwavering commitment to truth. It's all about separating verifiable historical fact from, popular folklore. Honestly, you could almost call it a work of data forensics, just as much as a biography. So how did this scholarly filter of his actually work? Picture it like this. Imagine you have two big piles of information. In the first pile, you've got all the legendary narrations. You know the kind, the stories passed down for centuries, maybe getting a little embellished along the way, without a solid verifiable source. Then, in the second pile, you have authenticated evidence, accounts that are historically cross-referenced, well-supported, and that can really stand up to scrutiny. Mubarakpuri's genius was his ironclad discipline in always choosing from that second pile. And there's even a specific Arabic term for this standard of proof. It's mustanad. This was his North Star, his guiding principle. He would intentionally ignore stories that were merely popular if they weren't also mustanad, that is, authenticated and well-supported. And it's this relentless, evidence-based approach that takes this book from just being a story and elevates it into a genuine historical treasure. Okay, great. So it's this incredibly researched historical document, but so what? Why should a biography from the 7th century matter to you and me right now in the 21st century? The answer is simple, because it's not just a history book, it's a blueprint. See, for the modern mind, this book offers so much more than just religious insight. It really transcends its original context. It becomes this essential case study for anyone, and I mean anyone, who's grappling with modern challenges.
If you care about leadership, about strategy, about how you build a just society from scratch, the answers are in here.
I mean, just look at what it offers. It's a blueprint for leadership in chaotic times. It's a masterclass in crisis management. It's a profound look at human resilience when the odds seem impossible. It's a study in diplomacy, in negotiation, and maybe most importantly, it's the ethical framework for how to build a just society. These aren't just dusty old footnotes from history, people. These are timeless solutions.
And it's because of that incredible depth that we knew we couldn't just do one explainer on this. It wouldn't do it justice. So instead, we've mapped out an entire journey for us to take together, all based on this foundational text.
Yep, our journey is going to span 35 distinct episodes. We are not rushing this. This is a conscious commitment to depth over brevity, because really, the only way to do justice to a masterpiece of this scale is to take our time and explore it properly, piece by piece.
And we're going to go deeper than just listing events. We're actually going to explore the historiography of the 7th century, which is really just the fancy way of saying we'll study how history itself was written back then. We're not just going to ask what happened. We're going to ask, how do we know what happened? We'll look at the sources, the context, all the things that shaped an entire civilization.
Ultimately, there's this really simple but powerful idea that's going to guide our whole series. It's the metaphor that history is a mirror. Because when you really look at the past with clarity and with honesty, you're not just learning about people from a long time ago. You end up learning an awful lot about yourself.
So the final question I have is really for you. Because in that mirror of history, we can see the potential for real transformation, for ourselves and for our world. So what happens when we actually dare to look into it? I invite you to join us on this journey to find out.